Okay, so you know how you send in Kristy Robinett's book, Embrace Your Empathy? Make sensitivity your strength?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're going to dive into today. Like, really get into what it means to be an empath.
Okay.
And maybe more importantly, how you can actually, like, live in the world when you're experiencing everything so intensely.
I think that's something a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah.
Especially if they're very sensitive.
Totally. Yeah.
You know?
So what really stood out to me when I started reading this book
Okay.
is Kristy herself.
Oh, yeah.
She describes herself as an overachieving, oversensitive, over-dramatized, over-sarcastic empath of a Scorpio.
Right.
And you can just tell right away that this isn't just, like, theoretical. You know, this is someone who really is in it deep.
Yeah.
With the feeling.
She seems very aware of herself, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, totally. And her story is wild.
Okay.
So Robinett is a psychic medium and author, and she says that she's been connected to the spirit world since she was a toddler. But get this.
Hey.
When she was 8 years old, the spirit of her dead grandfather actually helped her escape a kidnapper.
Oh, my gosh.
Isn't
that insane?
That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Especially when you're so young, too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like...
That would change
I
anything.
think it reshapes your reality, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like you said, it kind of makes you wonder what's even possible.
Yeah.
And she didn't stop there.
Okay.
She ended up actually working with law enforcement on cold cases.
Wow.
Yeah, she would give them these intuitive insights, and they were apparently so accurate that police would call her in to help with missing persons arson, all kinds of difficult unsolved crimes.
That's incredible.
It is, and she was even on Investigation Network's show Restless Souls back in 2014.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it focused on a case that she helped with.
Wow.
And she's been in other media, too.
Okay.
So this isn't just someone who's writing about empathy from like a textbook perspective.
Right.
She's actually lived it in some really intense ways.
That's great. Yeah, for sure. So let's like actually dive into the core of what Robinett means by being an empath.
Okay.
So she says that if you've ever been told that you're too sensitive,
Yeah.
or if you cry during like those super emotional movie moments, or if you feel really overwhelmed in large crowds, or if you're just like super affected by negativity, or even if you're really good at knowing when someone's lying to you.
Right.
She says you probably have some empathic tendencies.
So basically anyone who feels things deeply.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know how people often think of sensitivity as a weakness?
Yeah.
She completely flips that. She says empaths are actually incredibly strong.
I like that.
Like they're emotional weightlifters who are constantly carrying the feelings of everyone around them.
That's a good way to put it. It's very empowering.
Totally. And she talks about her own journey with this, too.
Okay.
Like how she was constantly told to toughen up as a kid.
Right.
And just feeling like she was on a totally different wavelength than everyone else.
It's got to be lonely.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And she says it wasn't until later in life that she actually, like, realized she was an empath.
Right.
And more importantly, that there are ways to understand and manage this crazy sensitivity.
Yeah.
And that shift in perspective, like actually seeing it as a gift instead of a flaw, seems like it was huge for her.
Yeah, that seems like a common thread in a lot of these stories.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
You know, where people who are very sensitive, they feel very isolated.
Right.
And then eventually they come to understand that they're an empath.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a relief.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, Robinett shares some early experiences that kind of give us a glimpse into how all of this developed for her.
Okay.
Okay, so picture this.
Yeah.
It's a typical summer day in the Midwest, and her dad is completely glued to his Detroit Tigers baseball game.
Oh, yeah.
And he can tell you every single baseball stat ever.
Right.
But he has no idea what's going on in her life.
Oh, wow.
Like, he doesn't even know who her best friend is.
That's got to be tough.
Oh, yeah. And she said this was a constant source of tension with her mom.
Yeah, I can see why.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, that kind of environment, that could really make a kid super sensitive to all the unspoken stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like all those emotional undercurrents.
Right, exactly.
And then she shares this really wild story about her mom.
Okay.
So they were near a bridge railing during this really intense moment.
Oh, wow.
And Robinett says she suddenly felt this huge shift in the energy.
Okay.
Like she just knew deep down that nothing bad was going to happen.
Wow.
And then get this, her mom somehow tripped backward away from the edge.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's crazy, right?
It really makes you think.
It does. And what happened after was really telling.
What happened?
Her mom ended up being hospitalized for mental health issues.
Wow.
Yeah, and Robinett says that even with treatment, her mom never really fully recovered.
So sad.
It is, and you can just imagine the impact that had on the whole family.
I'm sure it's huge.
Yeah, so it really highlights how powerful emotions can be.
Especially for sensitive people.
Totally. So let's talk about the downsides of being an empath.
Okay. Because there are definitely some.
Oh, for sure.
It's not all sunshine and roses, right?
No, not at all.
So Robinett lays out all these challenges.
Yeah.
And she starts with this idea that empaths actually absorb energy.
Like emotional sponges.
Yes.
Taking on everyone else's feelings.
And that's got to be exhausting.
Oh, it is. She says it can make you feel constantly drained.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing where you can end up appearing self-centered.
Oh, how so?
Well, when empaths get overwhelmed by all this absorbed energy,
Yeah.
they might withdraw or react in ways that people misinterpret as being negative or attention-seeking.
Right, because they're just trying to protect themselves.
Exactly.
But other people don't always see it that way.
Right, and here's a really tough one.
Okay.
Robinett says that empaths can attract narcissists and users.
Oh?
Yeah, it's like those manipulative people can sense that compassion and they try to take advantage of it.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and you know those people-pleasing tendencies?
Yeah.
They don't help.
Not at all.
Plus, empaths often cry easily.
Which is often seen as a weakness.
Exactly, and it can be really tough to deal with, especially when people judge you for it.
And then that can lead to suppressing your emotions.
Yeah, which is not healthy at all.
No, it's so important to allow yourself to feel your feelings.
Right. And another big struggle is boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Empaths have a really hard time with those.
It's so hard to say no.
It is, and it's easy to let all kinds of energy in both positive and negative.
And when you're constantly bombarded with everything, it's no wonder. Empaths often have a hard time with things like anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
It's just a lot to handle.
And she lists a bunch of other issues, too.
Like what?
Well, there's this guilt around experiencing your own negative emotion.
Right.
And that can lead to over-apologizing.
Yeah, apologizing for just being yourself.
Exactly. And jealousy can come up, too.
It's all tied into that deep capacity for connection.
Right. And then a lot of empaths report unexplained physical pain.
Wow.
Yeah, so it can really feel like you're cursed sometimes.
I could see how it would feel that way.
Yeah, like you're constantly losing pieces of yourself and feeling broken.
It's a lot.
It is. But thankfully, Robinett doesn't just leave us with all the bad stuff.
Good.
Yeah. She goes on to talk about intuition.
Which makes sense.
Totally. And she makes this really interesting point that you can't always explain intuition logically.
Okay.
She compares it to trying to prove love scientifically. You know, you can see the evidence, but you can't really dissect it.
Right.
And it's kind of the same with intuition.
You just know.
Yeah. And even though it might not be scientific, you can definitely see its impact in people's lives.
Absolutely.
And so she goes on to talk about how empaths actually decipher energy.
Interesting.
Yeah. She says that everyone experiences intuitive nudges differently.
Okay.
For some people, it's like a gut feeling. For others, it's like a quiet knowing. Yeah.
And for others, it can be like a physical discomfort.
Around certain people or places.
Exactly. And the key is to really pay attention to your own unique way of receiving these signals.
Like learning your own energetic language.
Yes, exactly. And then she talks about how important it is to actually follow your intuition.
Which can be scary.
Oh, it definitely can be.
Especially when it doesn't make sense logically.
Yeah, but she says it takes self-trust and consistency.
Right.
And that sometimes it's not a huge booming voice.
Right.
It can be subtle.
Like a little whisper.
Yeah, or a nudge. And she compares it to following breadcrumbs.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you have to have faith that those little clues are leading you somewhere.
Even if it's not always comfortable.
Right. But she believes that trusting your intuition will ultimately guide you towards peace.
It's about trusting the process.
Yes. And she also encourages empaths to really shine their light.
Okay.
She says everyone has this unique inner light and these special gifts. And fear is usually the thing holding us back. Holding us back from what?
From expressing those gifts, from being our true selves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and she believes that when we trust ourselves, it opens up a whole new level of freedom.
Freedom to be who you really are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now let's switch gears a little and talk about empathy in the workplace.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Because a lot of people spend so much time at work.
So true. And Robinett talks about both the strengths and the challenges that empaths face in professional settings.
Okay, so strengths first.
Yeah, so she points out that empaths are usually super creative
Yeah.
And they're deep thinkers. And they're often drawn to healing and helping others.
It makes sense.
It does. And she says they're great team players.
Okay.
And even though social interaction can be draining for them, they really are good at collaborating. They bring enthusiasm and focus and fairness and compassion.
Yeah.
And even a charitable spirit to their work.
So basically, they're awesome employees.
Right. Like, who wouldn't want to work with an empath?
Right.
But
there are challenges, too.
Oh, yeah. First,
like their sensitivity.
Yes, which can sometimes be seen as a negative thing in the workplace.
Especially in high-pressure environments.
Exactly. And they also have this tendency to take on other people's expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And not to mention the super high expectations they have for themselves.
And that can lead to some emotional responses.
Yeah, like crying in professional settings.
That's just often frowned upon.
Right, and Robinett even shares this story about running into a bully from her past.
In her waiting room?
Yeah, she was working as a life coach and psychic medium at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's this reminder that those past energies can resurface anywhere.
So true.
And she also talks about how she used to think that empathy and intuition didn't belong in the corporate world.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, like those softer skills aren't valued in a more structured environment.
Right.
But she really emphasizes how important it is for empaths to take care of themselves.
Okay, how do they do that?
Well, she starts by talking about boundaries.
Which are so important.
They are, and she reframes boundaries as being these guidelines for healthy interactions.
Not like walls.
Right. It's about how you allow people to engage with your energy.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and rest is so important for empaths, too.
Okay.
They need time alone to process all the energy they absorb and to reconnect with themselves.
Right.
And she talks about true rest.
Like, what's that?
It means resting without stimulant.
Oh, so no caffeine or alcohol.
Exactly. And she says that's how you really renew your spirit.
Okay.
And keeping a consistent sleep schedule is really important, too.
Sleep is crucial for everyone.
It really is. And then there's movement.
Oh, right.
She says physical activity is so important.
Why is that?
Well, it can really help shift stuck emotions, and it gives you a break from all the overstimulation.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and she also talks about focusing on what you can control.
Oh, yeah.
Like your own thoughts, your words, your actions, your behaviors, and your feelings.
And letting go of what you can't control.
Right, like other people's thoughts and feelings.
That's a tough one.
It is, but it's so freeing.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then there's mindful eating.
Okay.
She says nourishing yourself with healthy food really supports your well-being.
Including your energetic well-being.
Right, and she also talks about purposeful giving.
What does that mean?
It means being mindful of how you give to others,
Uh-huh.
making sure it's coming from a healthy place and not leading to your own depletion.
Oh, yeah, like making sure you're not giving too much.
Exactly. So it's about finding that balance.
It's a constant balancing act.
It is. So now let's talk about different types of empaths.
Okay, I'm interested in this.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So she mentions the plant empath.
What's a plant empath?
Someone who has a really deep connection to plants,
Okay.
like flowers and trees.
Uh-huh.
They often have that green thumb.
Right.
And then there's the weather empath.
Okay, what do they do?
Well, they're really tuned into weather patterns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they can even be sensitive to things like solar flares.
Really?
Yeah, and moon phases.
Wow.
And they're sometimes called geosentient.
That's a cool word.
It is so, it's not just about feeling other people's emotions.
No.
It can be so much broader than that.
Like feeling the Earth's emotions.
Yeah, exactly. And this leads to Robinett's big message.
What's that?
That sensitivity is a superpower.
Not a weakness.
Right. And she says that once you start understanding your own empathic traits, you can really uncover who you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And by developing coping mechanisms and life strategies,
Uh-huh.
you can lead a much healthier and more fulfilling life.
So embracing your sensitivity instead of trying to suppress it.
Exactly. And she shares this big moment in her own journey where she decided to leave the corporate world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she just knew it wasn't the right fit for her.
Right.
And she describes this huge wave of relief and freedom when she resigned.
Good for her.
Yeah, it was a big step, but it was necessary for her well-being.
It sounds like she was resisting her own path.
She was, and she learned to trust her intuition even when it didn't make sense to everyone else.
Which is a big lesson for all of us.
It is, and with her intuitive abilities, it's not surprising that she's had some crazy experiences as a paranormal investigator.
I bet.
She talks about energy preservation in that field.
Okay.
Like how she prefers to work with teams she trusts so she doesn't have to waste energy proving herself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And she describes this incredible sensitivity to certain environments.
Oh, like what?
So she walked into a room in this old tuberculosis hospital, and she instantly felt like she'd been punched in the chest.
Wow.
Yeah, and she could barely breathe.
Why?
She said the energy of past suffering was just so heavy in that space.
Wow.
Yeah, and someone else in the group actually felt the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, but they were hesitant to say anything.
That's so interesting.
It is, and it really shows how often empaths have these shared experiences.
They're not alone.
Right, and it's not always just emotional or intuitive. Robinett actually developed physical symptoms after one really intense investigation.
What kind of symptoms?
Well, she says they were very similar to tuberculosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so her doctor ran a ton of tests,
Yeah.
and they all came back clear.
Wow, so what happened?
Well, her symptoms eventually cleared up with holistic therapies.
Interesting.
Yeah, so she believes that she was experiencing it as a physical empath.
Meaning
Meaning that she's super vulnerable to both human and spirit energies.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's another story where she took on a severe migraine.
While doing a reading.
Yes, and it turned out that it was mirroring the physical trauma of the sitter's dead grandfather.
That's incredible.
It is, and there's this other wild story where she was at a historical site, and she vividly felt herself being shot and stabbed.
What?
Yeah, but there was no physical injury.
That's so scary.
It is, and she thinks she was absorbing the energy of past events.
Like she was reliving them?
Exactly. So, she's also worked with law enforcement.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yeah, and she shares this story where she immediately knew that a missing person was dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was tough because the family was still hoping for a different outcome.
That's a really difficult situation.
It is, and then there's this other case where she was helping with an arson investigation, and she physically felt the victim's experience.
Of being burned.
Yeah, and stabbed and betrayed.
Wow.
And it really took a toll on her.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so she actually developed strategies to sense the pain without fully feeling it.
Like a protective measure?
Exactly like watching a movie.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and her intuition isn't just about the past.
Okay.
She also talks about how it helps her respond to immediate crises.
Like what?
Well, she describes times when she had to stop sessions with clients.
Why?
Because she got these sudden warnings about their loved ones having emergencies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she even knew her own husband had cancer.
Before he was diagnosed.
Yeah, even though his tests were normal.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is, and she says it's so important to trust that inner voice.
Right.
But she also says that intuition doesn't always have to be about negative stuff.
Okay.
It can be about good things, too.
That's reassuring.
And, she points out that there's so many different fields where empathic abilities can be really helpful.
Like your kind of fields?
Well, she mentions medical professionals.
Okay.
They can really understand their patients' needs. And spiritual healers who can sense energy imbalances.
Yeah.
And law enforcement officers who might have a stronger sense of when something's wrong.
Right.
And judges, too.
Right.
And then there's teachers who can sense when a student's struggling. And caregivers and counselors who can connect on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And even creative people who can channel their emotions into art.
So empathy is valuable in a lot of different areas.
It really is. And Robinett also talks about empaths and social media.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because there's so much negativity online. And she shares a story about a friend who wanted to quit social media completely.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, but Robinett suggests a different approach.
What's that?
She says, empaths can be like spiritual gangsters,
Okay.
bringing light and positivity to the online world.
Like that.
Yeah, and she emphasizes the need for boundaries online.
Just like in real life.
Right. So being mindful of how much time you spend online and unfollowing accounts that drain your energy.
That's a good idea.
And she gives some practical tips for online well-being.
Like what?
Well, things like setting time limits and practicing self-love and ignoring negative comments and focusing on content that makes you feel good.
Okay.
And even visualizing a protective shield.
So basically taking care of your energy.
Exactly. And she talks about this technique called dimming your light.
What's that?
So you imagine this bright light around you, but then you dim the outer core.
Wow.
So that you only attract positive energies.
That's a cool visualization.
Yeah, and this sensitivity to energy goes beyond social media.
Okay.
Robinett says strangers are constantly approaching her.
Really?
Yeah, like they just feel compelled to share their personal stories.
Wow.
And she thinks it's because of the energy she gives off.
Like they can sense her empathy.
Exactly. And she tells the story about trusting her intuition in an everyday situation.
Okay.
So someone gave her this warning that seemed kind of alarming, but she sensed an underlying fear.
Okay.
And she was able to offer a calmer perspective.
That's amazing.
It is, and it shows how intuition can help in all kinds of situations.
And boundaries are important for empaths in all areas of life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially when it comes to those people-pleasing tendencies.
Right.
And Robinett shares this story about how she overreacted to a client's message while she was on vacation.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and she realized it was because she was overstimulated and exhausted.
So it was a good reminder to prioritize self-care.
Exactly, and that those who truly care about you will respect your boundaries.
Even if they don't understand them.
Right, and she also talks about over-apologizing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a big one for empaths.
I do that too.
Yeah, it's like a default response.
Even when you haven't done anything wrong.
Exactly, and Robinett had this boss who actually called her out on it.
Really?
Yeah, and it made her realize that all those apologies were actually devaluing her.
Wow.
Yeah, and she suggests using other phrases instead, like, pardon me, or excuse me.
That's a good tip.
It is, and it all ties into this idea of knowing your worth.
Which is so important.
It is, and she shares a story about this woman at a book signing who was super skeptical of her success and tried to get discounts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Robinett realized that arguing with her would just lower her own energy.
Right.
So it's about maintaining your sense of worth even when people try to bring you down.
That's powerful.
It is, and
Wow.
she also talks about pride.
Okay.
Like how holding on to pride can be a burden for empaths.
How so?
Well, it makes you feel like you always have to be strong. And you can end up feeling cranky and resentful.
Okay.
And she shares a story about a fight with her husband that was totally made worse by her own pride.
It's hard to let go of pride.
It is, but it's so worth it.
And what about those unexpected emotional triggers?
Oh, yeah, she talks about those too.
And what kind of triggers?
Well, things like commercials or songs. They can really set off empaths.
Yeah, I've definitely cried during commercials before.
Me too. And Robinett shares stories about crying in churches and being moved to tears by Christmas music.
It's like their emotions are just closer to the surface.
Exactly. And she also talks about how she can sense the emotions of people in her office building.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like she could feel this psychologist's distress even before she said anything.
That's wild.
It is, and she ended up helping her colleague identify the reasons behind her dread for her husband's Christmas party.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it shows how empathy can be used to support others.
Absolutely.
And Robinett gives us some really helpful tools for managing all of this.
Okay, what kind of tools?
Well, she talks about setting your energy.
How do you do that?
So you visualize positive energy radiating from your heart and imagine negative energy flowing out.
Okay.
And she also leads a protection exercise.
What's that?
It's a meditation where you imagine a protective color surrounding you.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and you send that light to your loved ones and even to people you find challenging.
So it's about sending love to everyone.
Exactly, and she also recommends essential oils like geranium
Okay.
and crystals that are known for protection and grounding, and using positive affirmations like, I am safe and I am loved.
Those are good ones.
They are, and Robinett also talks about how childhood experiences can affect empaths.
Makes sense.
Yeah, she shares her own experience of growing up with a mom who had mental health challenges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she says she had to learn to be hyper-aware of her mom's moods.
Like as a form of self-protection.
Exactly, and she compares it to trying to anticipate the scary music in a movie.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, you're always on edge waiting for something to happen.
And that can be really tough for a kid.
It is, and she calls this the things phenomenon.
What's that?
It's when other empaths just instantly recognize each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she tells a story about meeting someone at a charity event.
And
the woman just knew right away that Robinett was intuitive.
that's amazing.
It is, and she says it happens all the time.
Like strangers feel comfortable sharing their deepest secrets with her.
Exactly, and sometimes she even has to downplay her abilities.
Aye.
Because it can be overwhelming to be constantly bombarded with everyone's energy.
Yeah, I can see that.
And even when she tries to hide her feelings, her empathic husband can sense it.
Really?
Yeah, they have this deep connection where they just know what the other person is feeling.
That's beautiful.
It is, and Robinett also shares some common dislikes that many empaths have.
Like what?
Well, things like advice seekers who don't listen,
Yeah.
and feeling rushed or pressured, and clutter and conflict, and being in crowds.
Yeah, crowds can be tough.
They are, and feeling like a dumping ground for everyone's emotions.
It's gotta be draining.
It is, and she talks about how crowds can be especially intense for empaths.
Because of all the different energies.
Exactly. And she shares a story about having a panic attack in a store.
Wow.
Yeah, and this constant energy overload can lead to empathy fatigue.
What's that?
It's when you start feeling moody and irritable and tired.
Yeah.
And she talks about how this can happen in places like casinos.
Because of all the residual energy.
Exactly. And she emphasizes the importance of taking breaks and recharging.
So important.
It is. And then she talks about this Danish concept called hygge.
Okay.
It's all about coziness and comfort. And she says empaths have this strong sense of whether a place feels right to them.
Like an energetic feeling.
Yes, exactly. And they might have strong preferences for certain locations.
That makes sense.
And she also talks about the challenges for empaths who work in helping professions.
Okay.